Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. In this video, I want to take a moment to reintroduce the resources used for this channel. Also, I want to review the events that have occurred up until where we are at now in the Bible. We are beginning a new book, First Chronicles. The first resource used is the hard copy of the Bible. This is the single most advantageous resource you can have when studying, because once you have a hard copy, it can no longer be manipulated. That is a risk for digital resources. So where I'm from, it's very traditional to have these pages before we get to the copyright page, and who it's presented to, if a marriage has occurred, the families of both the bride and groom, births, and then other marriages and deaths. This is called a copyright page, and this is something that I've been getting incorrect until I had to look it up. And the importance of a copyright page is to establish who the copyright, who has the copyright, who is the publisher, what year it was published, the version. This would be advantageous if you were doing an academic research paper, because you would need that information here. The copyright in 1990, it's on the back. Then we have the table of contents. This would also be important for a research paper because you would need to list page numbers. So page numbers, just straightforward, tells you where the new chapters begin or the new books of the Bible begin. Then we have a part of the table of contents called Bible Study Helps. This includes things like land maps, units of measurement, and a part called the concordance. Now, a concordance is similar to a dictionary. You have certain terms listed, and when you find the term in the concordance, it will list scriptures pertaining to the topic. So, for instance, if you wanted to know about money, you would go to the concordance, find the term money, and then you would have a list of scriptures that are about money. After the table of contents, then you have the official title page. So that does it for our hard copy. And as always, I have bait keeping our place. So we have BibleGateway.com. This is our first digital resource. We are on First Chronicles. So we're going to scroll to Bible book list. And on this website, the first sentence or the first few words are listed next to the beginning or next to each chapter. So we are on First Chronicles 1. We click this, and now we have our chapter displayed. Two features about this website. First, there are many, many translations, and we also have a Spanish version or mini Spanish translations. Also, on this website, there is the capacity to display 5 parallels or translations on the screen at the same time. So I will demonstrate and also demonstrate why this is not my favorite source to use for parallels. Because as you can see, to me, this is a bit busy, and this does not encourage me to go further. BibleRef.com is my absolute favorite resource to use because this has helped me so much. We are on First Chronicles, so we're going to scroll down from select book, First Chronicles 1. Like, even how this is organized, it just encourages me to go further. So we click this, and to demonstrate parallels, you click on the verse that you're interested in looking at more closely, and as you can see, 7 parallels appear on the screen at the same time. Now, there's a limitation. There's only 7 translations, but to me, this finite number, it provides enough variety to see if there are differences in translations. And this has just been a very encouraging tool to help provide clarity. So Bible Ref is my favorite resource to use. Then we have the interlinear Bible. The importance of the interlinear is to display the Hebrew version. Now, from what I've seen so far, the Bible was originally written in Hebrew. So we want to know the Hebrew to English translation. I don't remember why I didn't like the Hebrew version, but the interlinear shows you the information that you want to know. So you click interlinear, you go up here to the top, and you drop down to First Chronicles, and then you click the chapter. So as you can see up here, there are all these different versions, translations, and tools. In my opinion, this is overwhelming, and it does not encourage me to move further. So I have not explored this website as much, but the value of this is that this is the closest translation that we have to the original. We have these characters here are Hebrew, and you have to actually read it from right to left. You also see the translation, the phonetic spellings of these words, and how it reads specifically in English. So the page numbering or the verse numbering is also a little bit different because it's from right to left. But these are our digital resources. So a couple of other sources of information that are really helpful. Merriam-Webster is a great dictionary and thesaurus tool. I also just type things into a search engine, but when I get a scripture, I always make sure that I double check that the information is correct. So if I get a scripture like this, I will look it up in the Bible in my hard copy. So the book of First Chronicles, it is traditionally associated with Ezra. I don't know who Ezra is, and I don't want to get tainted on who he is by reading what somebody else said. I would like to find out as I read through the Bible and then get outside sources if I still need them. So we see here that. So right now right now in First Chronicles, we've made it past Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob fathers the Israelites. Jacob himself has a name change in Genesis 32 to Israel. And so we start seeing the term Israelites or children of Israel being used in Genesis 49 and Exodus 1. Moses leads Israel out of enslavement in Egypt in Exodus 14, and he spends Exodus 15 through Exodus 34 writing these 123 chapters about himself in the wilderness. Now, Moses is credited for writing the first 5 books of the Bible. And when we read Genesis, we read about Adam and Eve, we read about Cain and Abel, the Tower of Babel. And it's just a detail to note that after Genesis, he spends the next 4 chapters writing about him and Israel in the wilderness. In Numbers 13, this is when the population that left out of Egypt with Moses, God tells them that he wants them to have this land of Canaan. So send some spies to seek out this land. But the spies don't have the correct attitude. And they discourage the people because they tell them, look, we saw ourselves as grasshoppers, and so we know we seem to them like grasshoppers. These previously enslaved people created in their minds what they were and what somebody else thought they were without having any interaction with them. So God said, you know what? I don't know what to do. I can't do anything with this mindset because people who create other people's thoughts without having an interaction with them can't do anything with them. So just let them die in the wilderness for 40 years because they don't have the right attitude and it's going to be too difficult to build anything with them. So Numbers 26 is when that population dies out and we have a new population. Those were the people that were born in the wilderness. So in Deuteronomy, Moses is talking to this new generation because, well, Joshua is appointed to lead them into Canaan. So the entire book of Deuteronomy just about is Moses talking and giving them advice and information about what they need to do in this new territory. The book of Joshua is about Israel settling into Canaan. So I also want to point out the promised land is not a term that is specifically mentioned. Those three words together, it's usually just Canaan. So Israel inheriting Canaan, it corresponds with both a prophecy given to Abraham in Genesis 15, and it confirms Noah's curse of his own grandson Canaan. In Genesis 9, Noah directly curses Canaan to serve his son Shem. Canaan is Noah's grandson. In Genesis 11, Shem's descendants are listed, which includes Abram. In Genesis 17, Abram gets a name change to Abraham. In Genesis 21, Abraham and Sarah have their son Isaac. In Genesis 25, Isaac and Rebekah has Jacob. In Genesis 32, Jacob sends his wives and children away and stays behind to wrestle with the man. And so every translation says man and not angel. Okay, there's a cross-reference in the hard copy to Hosea 12, and Hosea 12, 3 and 4. Did I miss it? Okay. Okay, this is referencing Numbers, Genesis. This is referencing Genesis 32. Okay, because this is talking about Jacob. The one who took his brother by his heel. He strove with God. He strove with the angel and prevailed. And so when we look at Hosea 1, it does seem that God is speaking. So I would need to read up to Hosea to just determine that that's correct, but that information is there. I just find it amusing that he sent his family away, his women and children away to wrestle with the man all night, and then the man touches him on his thigh and gives him a name change. So we know that Jacob births the children of Israel. They settle in Canaan and Joshua. In Judges chapter 1, we learn Israel does not keep God's commands. Israel disobeys God and has to have judges lead them. So when they first got to Canaan, there was no leader to be appointed over them after Joshua. When Moses was dying, or when Moses disobeyed God, God organized Joshua to be the next leader. So in Judges chapter 1, when Israel wanted to talk to God, they went to God directly. But because they disobeyed God and they didn't keep God's commands, and the command that God made for them was in Leviticus 18:19. These people that you're about to inherit this land over, they've made the land so sick with their behavior. Let's look at Leviticus 18 and 19. When you go into the new land, you shall not do as they do in Egypt. You shall not do as they do in Canaan, which I'm bringing you. Don't walk in their laws. Follow my rules. Okay? Then it gives all this list of sexual sins. And at the very end, it says, lest the land vomit you out because you make it unclean, as it vomited out the nation before you. And when we get here to 19, I gotta find where it says. When you come into the land, any tree is forbidden. 3 years is forbidden. The 4th year is holy. You can't eat it till the 5th year because of how dirty the land is. So when we get to Judges chapter 1 and 2, and we see that they didn't obey God's commands, this is why he explained this to them in Leviticus. They've made the land sick. So if you do the same thing, you're going to make the land sick too. They don't obey. And then in Judges 2:16 and in Judges 2, several things happen. First, they don't keep God's command. An angel visits them in Judges 2 and says, hey, you didn't keep God's command. They don't do anything. They have another generation of children who are now born in Canaan, so they didn't suffer the wilderness and they didn't suffer being enslaved. They are born in the new territory, totally disconnected from all that stuff. And they sin in Judges chapter 2. They start going after these other idols. And so God has to raise up leadership because, again, God did not appoint leadership immediately. It was only after they proved that they could not manage these previously enslaved people. When they proved they couldn't manage themselves, that's when God appointed leadership over them because they kept getting into captivity. So God had to give them some sort of leadership because they couldn't manage themselves. So after Judges 16, there are no more judges after Samson. We get to Judges 17, there were no kings in Israel. There weren't any leaders. So after the book of Judges, we have Ruth that occurs during the days there were judges. After Ruth, there's 1 Samuel. And 1 Samuel 8, Israel tells Samuel, the current prophet, that they don't want judges anymore. They want kings, specifically so they can be like the people around them, which God already told them not to do that. But in 1 Samuel 9, Saul is anointed to be king. 1 Samuel 16, my favorite, King David, is anointed to be king, but he doesn't even get to become king until 2 Samuel 1, 15 chapters later. In 2 Samuel 2, we learn that David is only accepted as king of Judah for 7 years and 6 months, and he's reluctantly accepted as king in 2 Samuel 5 over all Israel. David is my favorite king. He is my favorite man that I've read about so far because he has fought tooth and nail. That man endured so much suffering because of his calling, and he's really my favorite king still. So in 1 Kings 1, Solomon is appointed by his father David to be king, and that had to be a rush job because, again, David suffered so much. He had his own sons trying to take his kingdom. One of his sons staged a hostile takeover. As he was dying, another son organized a campaign trying to become king. So he's dying, and he's having to hurry up and appoint Solomon because his other son is trying to take the kingdom. And then there's this general indifference to David anyway from the start of his kingdom. So he had to deal with a lot of stuff that his son Solomon didn't have to deal with because Solomon became king over all Israel and it was peaceful. And there really was no reason for him to disobey God, but he did. But in 1 Kings 6, he spent 7 years building the first temple of God. In 1 Kings 11, Solomon disobeys God, which fractures the kingdom permanently. So the 7 years that David ruled that first kingdom, and it was like that split. Well, after Solomon disobeys, now there's a permanent split after 1 Kings 11. So we can look at 1 Kings 11. 29 to 36. Okay, Ahijah the prophet tore his garment into 12 pieces. And he only communicates there's a prophecy for 11 tribes. There's no explanation on what happened to this 12th tribe. But at the end of 1 Kings 11, we are introduced to the Acts of Solomon. Are they not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon? This is a book that I didn't see when I read this. But this is a book that is not included in the Bible, the book of the Acts of Solomon, but it's included here. When we get to 1 Kings 14, we are introduced to the Chronicles of Kings of Judah. I'm going to show you where it appears. Was it 1 Kings 14? Oh, I'm on the right page. Okay, see here, verse 19, Book of Chronicles of Kings of Israel. And then we're going to see Chronicles of Kings of Judah. Chronicles of Kings of Judah. So it's not until we get to 1 Kings 14 that we see these two other books, Chronicles of Kings of Judah, Chronicles of Kings of Israel. These both don't appear in the Bible either. So the context clues and the positioning of details gives enough information to reasonably assume that each of these books are lost documents, because Judah and Israel are now they're separate kingdoms. So when we look at Chronicles of Kings of Judah, that's one kingdom. Chronicles of Kings of Israel, Israel is a separate kingdom. So the rest of 1st and 2nd Kings 1 through 16 documents the changes of leadership in both Israel and Judah. And then 2nd Kings 17 is where we see the big whammy, okay? 2nd Kings 17, Israel is conquered, removed, and replaced by the Assyrians. Okay? In the 9th year, the king of Assyria captures Samaria. Samaria is like the capital of Israel. He carried the Israelites away. Okay? And then it says why. So it says here in 2 Kings 17, Israel was conquered, removed, replaced by the Assyrians. And in 2 Kings 24 and 25, we learn that the same thing happens to Judah. And it says only the poorest people were left. So now we are on First Chronicles, and it seems like this is sort of a restart. But not having the Chronicles or the annals of books of the Chronicles of Israel, the Chronicles of Judah, but we have First and Second Chronicles. Not quite sure who made that decision or what happened, but just wanted to put this information out there before we get to the next thing. So thank you for watching. I hope you decide to follow along. Have a wonderful day.